Wario. What the hell happened to this guy? Wario was this villainous, money-hungry, selfish, greedy anti-hero. At least that's what he was when I was growing up. He was quite literally the evil doppelganger of Mario. You know, the friendly Italian plumber who's known for saving the Mushroom Kingdom. Mario didn't do these things for some sort of potential gain or benefit. He did them because he understands that it is the right thing to do. No questions asked. He sets the right example. A man with morals and integrity. He is by definition the hero, the good guy. On the contrary, Wario, on the other hand, was known for not being the good guy. In fact, he was actually kind of a dick. Hell, at one point you could swear he was batshit insane with his original lazy eye design from 1992's Super Mario Land 2. It was the perfect balance. If you wanted neutral good, you'd go Mario. If you wanted chaotic neutral, you'd go Wario. Even commercials that aired around this time really showed how malicious Wario could be. Today, Wario is probably most recognized with the WarioWare series, since that's unfortunately what Wario has been relegated to nowadays. Let me preface this by saying that by no means I dislike WarioWare. In fact, two of my most favorite WarioWare titles are both Touched and Twisted. I think WarioWare is unique and it definitely deserves its own spot. But that isn't to say that I've completely forgotten the old brute macho Wario versus the current overly gross Wario. It's probably safe to say that Nintendo doesn't really consider classic platforming Wario anymore, and hasn't for more than a decade at this point. Long gone are the treasure hunting days, and only really getting references and bits of his past with his original outfit in the spin-off titles, or certain moves like the shoulder bash being in the Smash Brothers games. With Nintendo really pushing Wario in his biker attire in favor of the classic overalls Wario. One of Wario's original traits, for example, is to be absolutely disgusting, at least in the eastern part of the world. This goes back as far as Wario literally describing his bowel movement in extreme detail on the Japanese website for Wario Land 4 in 2001. I can't say for certain when this toilet humor version of Wario came to the West, but I think the first instance of this version of Wario becoming the universal character for all regions dates all the way back to E3's 2006 trailer of Super Smash Bros. Brawl, where Wario literally destroys everyone with a nuclear fart bomb. I know some may say, well, they're the same character, aren't they? And to that I say, well, not really. At least at the time when I watched that, I didn't think they were. I even questioned why he was in his biker outfit instead of his iconic overalls. Also, why the hell was he farting? Honestly, it falls in line with Masahiro Sakurai always staying true to the source material, so it makes sense. For a brief moment, the rest of the world got a westernization version of Wario that was a little different before they dropped it entirely by following the original Japanese characteristics. Modern spiritual successors such as Anton from Anton Blast and Peppino from Pizza Tower understand the original Western characteristic trait. They take a lot of influence from what Wario used to be, right down to the character design, and it's amongst the many other reasons why those games are so great, but that's a discussion for another day. The Wario I grew up with was known for the Wario Land series, a 2D platform side-scrolling adventure where Wario's main objective was to shoulder bash his enemies and grab all types of valuable treasures along the way. Over the course of 15 years, from 1994 to 2008, it spawned over 5 mainline titles, each on their own respective console or handheld. They were a nice change of pace in comparison to the Mario platformers at the time. Wario Land really encouraged exploration, with certain games having fun gimmicks like Wario Land 4's level end escape segments. And I do hope that one day Nintendo decides to resurrect this series from the grave. However, there is one particular spin-off from the Wario Land games that I want to focus on today, and no pun intended, I feel is a literal hidden gem. It's almost as if it never really got the recognition it deserves, which honestly surprises me. I'm talking about Wario World. Unfortunately, there isn't much information on the internet surrounding the development history other than some very dated E3 trailers from 2002 and some beta elements differing from the final product, but that's okay. I genuinely want to focus on the game itself this time around. Before getting into that, a quick fun fact: the development team behind Wario World was actually developed by a video game studio named Treasure. This company was formed in 1992 by former Konami employees and exclusively developed games for the Sega Genesis during the 90s. So the crazy part is that all of this just happens to be a coincidence. Wario and Treasure. How fitting. Wario World, being developed by Treasure and published by Nintendo, was released for the Nintendo Gamecube in most parts of the world in 2003, before finally hitting the streets of Japan in 2004. It sold incredibly well, as it was considered a commercial success by Nintendo, selling over 142,000 copies in Japan and over 256,000 copies in the United States. So what the hell happened? Why does nobody remember it? Why does nobody talk about it? And why the did it not get a sequel? It's just been lost to time, not even seeing a re-release or a port to other consoles since its initial launch in 2003. The only legal way to play this game today is to own the original physical copy for the GameCube, and no other method. But of course, modern problems require modern solutions. And if you try hard enough, anything can be a GameCube. So for the purpose of this review, I'll be using my, powerful GameCube. Don't worry, the game will look exactly the same as it did on original hardware, just with widescreen. Anyways, let's jump in. This is probably one of the wackiest games I've played from Nintendo. From the world environment, the character design, and even the weird-ass bosses in this game. But I guess it isn't too far off from the Wario Land series, since the overall themes in those games are equally as strange as well. The plot of Wario World is incredibly simple. An evil black jewel that fed on the desires of people, which then turned it into power, was deemed unsafe for the world. So the Spritelings sealed it away for good. That is, until this greedy treasure hunter named Wario stole this jewel to put in his castle. This evil black jewel then awakens and all hell ensues. Wario now has to restore peace by getting his treasure back and rescuing the Spritelings. The game's cinematic begins with Wario manically laughing in his luxurious castle, only to be interrupted by the jewel. I guess the echoes from Wario's obnoxiously loud laughter might have disturbed this thing from its eternal slumber. Wario then falls into the void, where he's transported into the world where the game takes place in, and he's like completely unfazed. He lands headfirst, gets up, and immediately is ready for action. Wario doesn't even give a fuck, he just wants his gold back. First thing I noticed was how tight the controls are, and that's something in common I've seen with many of the early 3D platformers from the 2000s I've been revisiting again. Games like Mario Sunshine, Sonic Adventure 1 and 2, and Wario World all control so nicely. It's something I haven't seen in current 3D platformers. I don't think it's a case of rose-tinted glasses either. Take something like Mario Odyssey, for example, which has a small delay to make you run in place before hitting your max run speed, which I understand it might be better from a game development perspective to prevent accidental falls, but it still doesn't feel as tight as simply slamming the analog stick and going full speed in the direction you're facing. I guess that was one of the many quirks of early 3D platformers. Anyways, not to get off track, you'll land in the main hub world and discover quickly that there's 4 worlds to travel to, with 3 of them being locked until you complete them in order. There's not much else to do in the hub world since majority of it is locked, but the music is funky as hell, and I love it. I can honestly say that for most tracks in the game. Now, let's talk about some actual gameplay. First thing you'll notice is that this is a beat 'em up game. So Wario is fully kitted out with some sick moves, and there's a decent amount of things Wario is capable of. You can run around, punch, ground pound, and pile drive the absolute living out of your enemies. And that's just to name a few. They really exaggerate how strong Wario is in this game too, which I absolutely adore. Certain attacks like punching and ground pounding shake the entire atmosphere. Like, holy shit. This guy is strong, pummeling enemies, lifting to charge a throw, and even using his iconic shoulder bash to mow down a wave of enemies is the perfect recipe for sending dopamine to my brain. Hell, he's even got some inspiration from other familiar characters such as Mario with his wild swing ding and Kirby with his hypersuction. And no, I'm not making these names up, that's what they're officially called via the instruction manual. Wario should definitely catch an assault charge for being this reckless. Nintendo and Treasure crafted a very brute Wario here, and it definitely shows. It's exactly what I was talking about earlier when I said that I missed this version of Wario that we barely see nowadays. But anyways, as we head into World 1, you're instantly greeted with what is the most Wario-themed soundtrack I have ever heard. Greenhorn Forest. Everything about the composition of this song just screams Wario. It audibly sounds so jazzy and evil, like some hefty guy is coming around to collect what's rightfully his. The piano, the saxophone, and all the other instruments just blend together so nicely to make such an iconic theme for Wario. As you start attacking and throwing your enemies around, even the presentation with Wario's voice stood out to me. It was something I noticed immediately. In my opinion, I feel like this is Charles Martinet's best performance of Wario I have ever heard since 2003. We are currently in 2025, and I genuinely don't think there's been a game since Wario World where Wario just sounds so badass. His evil laughter and attack noises are super satisfying to listen to. Easily my favorites are just hearing him laugh, yell, "Get out of here," or "Have a rotten day." Just hear it for yourself. The performance by Martinet is nothing short of immaculate. He really gave it his all when it came down to voicing Wario in this game. It's crazy to think that his vocal range could go from something like greedy and mischievous Wario to lighthearted and friendly Mario to the deep philosophical wisdom of Paarthurnax from Skyrim. There is no doubt in my mind that this guy is wildly talented. Anyways, the level design in the first world is pretty good, almost designed like a tutorial to show you what to expect in the later levels, without really compromising the aspects of fun gameplay or holding your hand too much. The stages are very long, ranging from about 15 to 20 minutes from start to end, but within each level there's plenty to do and plenty of collectibles to obtain throughout the way. In each stage, there's spritlings that need to be free from these cages, which give advice for any upcoming challenge or just some friendly tips. They are obnoxiously loud as hell, so it'd be hard to miss them. You'll also need to obtain the red diamonds in each level. These diamonds are located beneath the ground past these glowing trapdoors, with some requiring you to pile drive into them in order to access it. Every level also has these challenge rooms, and believe me, they aren't that challenging in World 1, but they dramatically increase in difficulty in the later worlds. Collecting all of these red diamonds from these challenge rooms will grant you access to the boss of that particular stage. If you miss a couple, you can take the bye-bye balloon at the end of the stage to fly your ass back to the very beginning to do it all over again. My advice to you is definitely collect anything you can along the way, as these stages are pretty lengthy and having a restart is already time consuming enough. There's also these gold statues that are scattered around as well. They'll increase Wario's default heart meter from 4 and up, allowing him to take more damage if needed. And if I'm being completely accurate to the game's lore, Wario himself refers to these gold statues as Mr. Wario's gold statues. He apparently breaks the fourth wall and critiques the development team for not giving it the correct name. What an asshole. Of course, this wouldn't be a Wario game if there wasn't an overabundance of coins everywhere, which I assume are from Wario's destroyed castle. These coins do serve a purpose, as you can use them to buy garlic from the garlic dispensary if you're running low on hearts, or if you're like me and manage to up multiple times to the point where you now have to pay a small fee in order to continue playing. I guess Wario, being the true pioneer of microtransactions before they were a thing, describes his greedy ass so well. And last but not least, there's obviously actual treasures to collect. Punching these giant colorful buttons randomly located in each stage will spawn a treasure chest, which will have some of Wario's treasure that was lost during the destruction. Finding all of these treasures within a stage will grant you access to some what I like to call Wario DLC, which is essentially demos of WarioWare Mega micro games that you can transfer to your Game Boy Advance via a link cable. And they're genuinely cool bonuses to have if you happen to be fortunate enough as a kid fortunate to own all of these Nintendo peripherals. Moving on, the enemies and bosses are challenging, but not impossible. Most enemies don't require insane amounts of knowledge to defeat them, and the game does a pretty good job of letting you know if a certain attack is inflicting damage or if they're invulnerable to it. There's 4 worlds and 3 stages within each world, with multiple bosses that you must defeat before you're able to progress. World 1, Excitement Central. Both Greenhorn Forest and Greenhorn Ruins are fantastic. Lots to do, plenty of enemies to mow down, and a good foundation for the game. We were also given the most iconic soundtrack for Wario. Overall, just a good introductory world to know what to expect for the rest of the game. All 3 boss fights are pretty easy here too, especially Dino Mighty. Something about spinning him around at high velocities and throwing his ass off stage was entertaining for me. World 2, Spooktastic World. Horror Manor has a catchy, funky theme that stood out to me. Obviously has a spooky theme going on, but still cool nonetheless. Stage itself was very good, so no complaints here. Wonky Circus is, you guessed it, filled with circus-themed enemies trying to kill you. These electric clown fence obstructions are very unique. They force you to chuck enemies at these moving targets as if it were some sort of sick, twisted carnival game. Might actually be nightmare fuel for some. Wario's always in the spotlight, so you're both a narcissist and hard to miss. Good level design in both stages, and the bosses in World 2 are a little creepy, but still easy enough. Now, one moment. This is probably a good time to track any collectibles I've obtained. Let's just go to the pause menu and... shut up already!
Sorry.
Never mind. World 3. Thrillsville. Shivering Mountain was terrible. There's a couple of segments where you have to slide down a mountain, and since you can't really see what's in front of you, it's easy to miss certain treasures or collectibles you're trying to obtain, especially if you're trying to go for a 100% completion rate. Not that it matters, but I ended up doing it anyway. It just sucks to not be able to see in front of you in time enough to react. Not that great of a stage. This is also where I feel the challenge stages started ramping up in difficulty, but I guess it makes sense. Beanstalk Way was fun, and level design was creative, forcing you to use these giant magnets to create platforms for yourself. I did get to this part with the tree blocking your path, and some might chalk it up to a skill issue, but I didn't realize you could pick these things up and chuck them at the tree. I kept dying and had to pay my yearly microtransaction fee to continue playing. Still a good stage nonetheless. Okay, I do feel the need to reiterate that the bosses in this game, from a design standpoint, are so strangely designed. I cannot stress that enough. I mean, look at this fucking thing. Does it look like something that belongs in a Nintendo game, let alone Wario? Stage bosses were interesting to say the least. Not challenging, but man, what kind of drug-induced fever trip is this? World 4, Sparkle Land. Mirror Mansion was very cool. The creativity from the game developers really shined here. Most of the path is blocked from the player's perspective, so there's these giant mirrors that you can see in the background that sort of navigate you in the direction you're supposed to go, with some enemies that are straight up invisible and can only be seen through the mirrors. This specific part here where you have to climb the fence while using the mirror on the ground to guide, I felt was a little challenging. Had to go through it a couple times, but I managed to get through it. And last but not least, Pecan Sands, or Pecan Sands. Something about a desert-themed stage with pyramids, gold, and Wario fits so well together. It is definitely one of the longest stages in the game, taking me about roughly 30 to 40 minutes to complete it, but the entire time was an absolute blast to get through, except for whoever the hell designed this challenge room. It was difficult as a kid, and I still kind of struggle with it even now, but a little challenge isn't going to stop me. The boss fights in World 4 were also very easy, so no complaints here. The one thing that did stand out to me the most was the showdown with Captain Skull on the broken pirate ship. Such a cool little fight between the two. Once you complete World 4, you can go to the giant treasure chest in the main hub to fight the final boss of the game. And I hate to say it, but this boss was incredibly underwhelming, and honestly was kind of disappointing to see that it wasn't challenging at all. The jewel just kind of repeats the same laser move and nothing really interesting happens. I thought it would switch up different moves or ramp up in difficulty the more its health depleted, but no, nothing. Which is kind of a letdown for something that's supposed to be the finale of the game. Ridiculously easy and disappointing is all I can say. However, the Japanese version of Wario World fixes this problem entirely by adding a completely new second phase to the final showdown. And my god, this would have been fucking awesome. This new theme song rivals Greenhorn Forest in my opinion. And I can't believe I wasn't aware of the extra phase until I started doing research for this game. I went 20 years without even knowing this. What a mind-blowing discovery. Once you destroy the jewel, the game is finally over. You'll get a cute cutscene of the spritlings dancing in unison, and depending how many of them you've collected throughout your journey will determine the quality of the castle. I thought this last scene where Wario is absolutely mind blown was fucking hilarious, and I think I got somewhere between 30 and 40 spritlings, so I got the quote-unquote golden ending, which is good enough for me. Overall, besides the overwhelmingly bad endgame boss, the game itself is fantastic. It was an absolute joy to play from start to finish, but I'm not done yet. There is one problem, one massive problem with the entire game. It's not the enemies, it's not the stages, hell, it's not even the endgame boss. It's the fact that this game is too fucking short. I'm not joking. I beat this game in one afternoon. It took me 6 hours to beat the entire game, without forgetting to mention that I heavily explored and tried to collect everything I possibly could to extend the game's length as much as I possibly could. 6 hours! And with basically little to no post-game content, that's really it. This was most likely the downfall of Wario World. Even most reviewers at the time mentioned that it was a great game, but was something that should be rented instead of buying. Damn, do people even remember Blockbuster? To be quite frank, it doesn't automatically make it a bad game. I've always viewed it as a hidden gem, and realistically, this was definitely something that could have been improved on if it ever got a sequel. The foundation for this game was remarkable, and it makes me sad that this is the only Wario World game we ever got. To wrap this up, Wario World is truly iconic, and an incredible game to say the least. It's where I feel this personality of brute Macho Wario was really in full display, and was really an awesome experimentation of Wario within a 3D landscape. Maybe one day they'll revisit this game and, who knows, revive a dead franchise from the grave.